Discovery. Finding devices in the switched network. By the time we're done here, you will be able to locate a device in the network down to the switch port level. I've got to be honest, I've kind of fallen in love with our paper napkin network diagram that we have here on the screen. Every nugget, I'm like, oh, I need to make this look professional and label everything. And I'm like, this is just so real and gritty. I like it. We're now approaching the end of this IT Expert series. And my mission this entire time is to give you the core of switching. Meaning 90% of the switch networks that you're going to run into are going to encounter exactly what we've run into in this series outside of VLANs, which I told you was going to be a completely separate series just focused on that technology. And there have been a lot of topics that have made their way into my brain, and I'm like, oh, I should talk about that. And I'm like, no, that's fringe. That's not the 90%. That is in everything except for this idea of discovery. And it comes at you many different ways in a network environment. You might have a server, and that server is acting up, and you go, I wonder if that's a network issue. And you think to yourself, where is that plugged in? Or maybe you've got a bandwidth hog on the network, somebody's sucking up all the internet bandwidth, and you find out what IP address it is from your firewall or internet reporting or however you figure out who that person is. And you think, oh, it's the guy with the computer named Bob's PC. Now, where is Bob's PC? These are just two examples of hundreds that I could come up with on locating devices in the network. Now, once again, I'm going to point you back to the documentation and say, if we had a full flare documentation, I'm going to keep going back to that statement, where we went through originally and documented every port and what it was connected to, a lot of those issues would resolve themselves simply by looking at the documentation. But you will encounter situations where either there is no documentation, or the documentation isn't updated, or you've got a foreign device in your network that simply wouldn't be documented. The last puzzle piece that I want to give you in this series is the ability to find network devices, even if you have good documentation, bad documentation, or no documentation at all. So let's come back to the situation I was mentioning just a moment ago. There's a server, and we want to know where it's plugged in, and that's a very real situation right now. We have a server at this office named BBUS 3001-03. Now that's the host name of the Windows server. A lot of people call that the DNS name. Our first milestone is to try and figure out what IP address that has. Sometimes it's really easy, and sometimes it's a challenge. If you're plugged into the same network as the server, you may be able to just ping it. Ping BBUS 3001-03. In this case, it comes back and says, here's the server, and here's its IP address. The reason why is because DNS was able to resolve that. I could also type in NSLOOKUP, which is a great little utility, where this server is the DNS server, and I could type in that host name like that. Now, I just typed in the name without any domain after, and it's like, well, I don't know who that is. I need to type in the fully qualified domain name like this, and it comes back and says, oh, that's 10.225.1.252. If all you have is a name and NSLOOKUP and ping doesn't work, you're going to have to resort to some grittier techniques like logging onto that server, typing in ipconfig, working with a Windows admin, something. You can't be left completely in the dark. As soon as you have an IP address, you're going to be able to ping that and get its MAC address. Watch this. Ping 10.225.1.252. Comes back and says, hey, I'm replying all day. Now, the way that happens is my computer actually sent out an ARP message that said, hey, 10.225.252, what is your MAC address? That's a broadcast, and everybody got that, including the server. And the server came back and said, here's my MAC address. And then my computer pinged it. So my computer, behind the scenes, knows what the MAC address of this server really is. I can find that out by typing in ARP-A. And it gives me a list of all the different devices that it's seen on the network and the MAC addresses that it's cached, meaning kept in memory. And right there's my server, 10.225.1.252, and there is the MAC address, the golden piece of information. I'm going to right-click on that to copy it to my clipboard, and we need to have some kind of starting point with the switch. Now, we've got this paper napkin network diagram that we've been building the entire time, so we're very familiar with the network environment. But even if we're not, you need to be able to get onto some switch somewhere as a starting point. So again, that may be a console port. That may be some nitty-gritty techniques if you're just walking into a network environment that you don't know. But most of the time, you'll find some IP address that you have to begin. I'm going to start right here with Suite 4 Switch 2. I don't know where that server is in the network, but we're about to find out. I'm going to open my command prompt again and telnet to 10.225.1.243, which is that switch. Now you can do this from the graphic interface, it's just not as fast. And you definitely don't look as cool if somebody's looking over your shoulder. I'm going to log in with username Cisco, type in the password, and I'm there at the prompt. Now, I copied that server's MAC address to the clipboard, and I'm going to paste it into Notepad so I don't lose it. Now we know this whole network. We've been drawing it on the paper napkin behind us this entire series. But I want you to pretend like we don't. Imagine, just like this command prompt and Notepad are blocking all the diagram behind it, imagine the only thing that we know is that we have this switch number 2. The command I'm going to type in is show MAC address table, and I'll hit the question mark, and it says you can either look at an interface to find out what MAC addresses are under it, a certain VLAN, but the one that I'm after is a specific MAC address. So I'll type in address, and then it says, well, what specific MAC address do you want to type in? Now, notice it's giving me the option of all these different formats. That's because depending on the operating system, you may see all kinds of formats of MAC address. Some people will put dashes between them. That's most often Windows. Some devices will put colons between them instead. I see that all the time on Linux. And some devices will put periods. And instead of every 2 characters, it'll do it every 4. Like that. These are all the same thing. They're all a 12-character MAC address. It's just what format does it take. Now, this switch is very kind to us in the sense that it accepts any one of those formats. But that's why the question mark is also handy, because you may be on a switch platform that only takes this one or this bottom one or whatever the case. So I'm going to copy that top one to the clipboard and paste it into place. I hit the Enter key. Now this switch says, well, wait a second here. This MAC address is actually on port GI28. Now you and I, who know this network diagram, immediately go, no way, it's not on port 28. Port 28 connects to another switch. But remember, from this switch's perspective, it does see it on port 28, meaning my computer is right here, somewhere. I don't know what port it's on. And when I pinged that device, this switch saw the reply come back in port 28. So from all it knows, it's thinking, well, that server must be somewhere over there, or at least from this switch's perspective, it knows to reach that server, I've got to go out that port. But that's the behind the scenes, remember? You and I are not supposed to know what this network looks like. Oh man, I got a drink and it timed me out. Let me telnet back in there. So what if we didn't have this network diagram? How would we know that this wouldn't be the server itself plugged into that? Well, the first thing that I do, anytime I see what port a MAC address is on, if I don't have a network diagram, is I type in show MAC address and I say, show me the interface GI28. Because if that truly is the server plugged in there, how many MAC addresses will be on that port? It should just be 1, right? So I'll hit the Enter key. And what do I see? I see a whole bunch of MAC addresses on there. So at that point I go, okay, that's not the port the server's plugged into. That's a uplink port. So then I will go show CDP neighbors if I'm on a Cisco switch, and I'll say, okay, port 28 connects over here to port 52 of this, and that's where I usually have a paper napkin next to me, or at least a sheet of paper, and I'm starting to draw what things are connected to what. So I go, okay, then the server must be over there on that switch, which at least is a point in the right direction. So I'll type in show CDP neighbors detail, and you remember if you're not on a Cisco switch, you can use LLDP to do that. Or if you don't have any CDP or LLDP, as I'm scrolling through all this information, if you don't have any of that, then you would move your console cable over to the next switch in the chain, because you wouldn't have a simple way to figure out what's there. So I scroll to the bottom of the list and I see the detail about that switch. It says, okay, my interface GI28 is plugged into the remote interface GI52. Now again, you and I can look at this diagram and go, well, of course, that's right. 28 comes over here to 52 on that side, but we can't really see that. What we do see is the remote IP address of that switch. So I open another command prompt and I say, okay, let's telnet over to 10.225.1.241, which is the remote switch. I log in with Cisco, type in the password, and I'll just save myself some typing time and copy that same command. Oh, yikes. This same command from here and paste it right there. Now it's saying, oh, okay, this MAC address is actually on port PO1. Now, knowing what we know about switches, the chances are pretty slim that we have a lag port configured to the server. Now, the chance is there, so I'm still going to verify, and I'm going to type in show MAC address, address table, interface PO1. And sure enough, it's not just one MAC address. I've got all kinds of MAC addresses on there. So once again, I'll do a show CDP neighbors, and it's going, okay, well, I'm connected to these switches. Now, I don't see PO1 in the list. So we'll type in the command show interfaces port channel and hit the enter key. And I go, okay, port channel 1 is really comprised of 49 and 50. So 49 and 50 right here, go to 49 and 50 right there. Okay, I'm seeing how that works. So I'll come back, hit the up arrow, and do that show CDP neighbors detail and find out, okay, port channel 1, which has this MAC address right here, goes to this switch up here, 10.225.1.240. I'm opening another command prompt, telling that 10.225.1.240. Now I know you might be thinking, really? Is it really this tedious? If you don't have a network diagram and documentation, absolutely. As a matter of fact, when I created the documentation nugget, I posted a screen cap of the slide showing what documentation you should create to Twitter. And you know what's funny is somebody replied and they go, well, what fun would that be? Then I wouldn't be able to use show CDP neighbors and show MAC address table to figure out where stuff is. Now, obviously he's saying it tongue in cheek, but we all know there's so much truth in that statement. This is day-to-day life in a switching administrator's book. Did that make sense at all? This is normal network engineering. You know what I mean. So I'm back here and now I'm going to copy that same show MAC address table command out of here. Boom, right there. Hit the enter key, paste that in, and there it is. Okay, so it's saying this is on port GI28. Okay, well, let's do this. Show MAC address table, interface GI28. Enter. Look at that. Now I'm down to one MAC address. This is the port that server is plugged into. So if I were to go over and unplug or shut down GI28, this server would be unreachable. I've now located that network device. It is on RT-ST1 SW1 port 28, BBUS 3001-03 site server. You are now equipped with just about every skill I could think of for core day-to-day switch administration. All the way from designing the network, building it from the ground up, connecting the switches correctly, into proper documentation, spanning tree configuration, lag ports, to finally what we just talked about, finding devices in the network. This series has been a blast to create, and I hope on the receiving end that the feeling is mutual. You know where I'm going next. I've got to create a series on VLANs. So once you are feeling awesome about what we've talked about in this series, I want you to jump right into that and let's scale our network to an entirely new level. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.